The Dreaming Ones. Chapter 1, The Choice. It began with a door that shouldn't have been there. Not hidden, just wrong, slightly too narrow. Set too far to the left? Its frame was the color of rust, though no metal in the house had ever rusted before. And the moment I opened it, the world shifted, just slightly, like a dream sliding off its hinges. The air changed, heavier, still, the sky outside. The window had the same soft light, but something in it felt fabricated like painted glass behind a stage. I didn't notice right away, not until I went into town and saw their eyes. The barista at the cafe smiled, but the smile didn't quite reach her. Mr. Dolan, from the bakery, waved at me from across the road, and I swear, he waved with the wrong hand. The people I had known all my life felt suddenly like costumes, like memory acting itself out. And that's when it cracked. Just a second, a glitch, and I saw it. Pods, rows and rows of them. Humans floating in suspension, sleeping, dreaming. I was one of them. Somewhere, far from Earth, because Earth was no longer. Our minds preserved, linked, dreaming. But this wasn't safety. This was entrapment. We weren't alone in here. The dream had taken on a shape of its own, formed by our collective memories, traumas, fantasies, fears. Entities roamed the folds, not creatures but reflections. Thought made flesh. Belief made law. I knew then this wasn't my first cycle. I'd made the choice before, over and over, and every time the world would change. The dream would reconfigure, and I'd forget, until now.
The Dreaming Ones. Chapter 2, The Seam. I didn't go home that night. Not because I was afraid, exactly, though I was, but because the house no longer felt like mine. The walls were too clean. The mirror in the hallway reflected just a little too slowly, and the family photo on the mantel had been rearranged. My mother stood where my brother should have been. My brother's face was blurred. No one else noticed. The people passed by on the streets with the same polite rhythm, their voices too even, their movements too precise. It felt like a town rehearsing itself over and over until the script ran out. I walked through streets I knew by heart, but now led somewhere else. I passed the old school, now a train station. The park was now a pond. The butcher's shop was gone, replaced by a paper shop where the pages fluttered with symbols instead of words. And still I walked. At some point the sky split. Not like lightning, not violently, more like a seam in fabric pulling gently open, a line barely visible, revealing something behind it, darker than night, deeper than black. I blinked, it closed. But I had seen it. Something was watching from the other side. I remembered the pods then, the vision from before, the endless hall. The sleeping ones, all of us adrift, each dreaming alone, and together. I had to know, was I the only one who had remembered? Was this town a loop or a trap? Could I wake up fully, or was this as awake as I would get? I returned to the door, the one that had started it all. It was there, still slightly wrong, humming faintly beneath its paint. The handle was cold, familiar, heavy. I placed my hand on it and the dream pulsed. The Dreaming Ones. Chapter 3, The Room That Remembers. The door opened without a sound. No creak, no resistance, just a quiet rush of air, warm like breath. Inside, a room I'd never seen yet knew too well. It was dimly lit by a single hanging bulb swaying gently, though there was no wind. Dust hung in the air like old thoughts. The wallpaper peeled in long strips, revealing older patterns underneath, geometric shapes, eyes, mouths, words I couldn't read. There was a chair in the center, and on it someone sat, or rather, something that looked like me, but older, weathered, wiser maybe, or broken. It didn't speak at first, just stared, as if waiting for me to say the thing we both already knew. "You're not real," I said. It tilted its head. "Neither are you." I stepped closer and the room began to flicker. Brief pulses of other rooms, a childhood bedroom, a hospital corridor, the deck of a ship looking out into blackness. Each flash lasted less than a second, like memories testing themselves. The figure in the chair stood up. "You've been here before," it said, voice layered, mine beneath something else deeper. "Every time you remember, the dream shifts. But you always forget again. This time you came further." I didn't answer. I was watching the wall behind it now. It had become a window. Beyond it, stars. Endless wheeling stars. And the pods. So many. Some were empty. Some flickering. "They're waking up," the figure said. "Some slowly. Some violently. Most don't believe it's a dream at all. They've forgotten Earth. Forgotten what it meant to be real. They're building lives inside a memory." I looked down. The floor beneath my feet was glass now. Below, me asleep in the pod. Eyes closed, breathing slow, alone. I looked back up, but the figure was gone. In its place, a mirror. And in the mirror, not my reflection, but a child, watching me. A version of myself I hadn't remembered until now. And just before the dream shifted again, the child whispered, "They're coming. Don't wake up yet." The dreaming ones. Chapter 4, The Echoing. I left the mirror behind. The hallway it opened into had not been there before. It curved downward gently like a spiral. The walls breathed, not visibly, but I could feel it. As though the entire place were alive, watching, waiting. There were sounds now. Faint at first. Echoes, whispers. Not in words, but memories. Not mine. Laughter. Crying. A child calling for their mother in a language I didn't recognize. And then, footsteps, not mine. I turned a corner and saw her. She was standing perfectly still, one hand on the wall as though holding herself up. Her eyes met mine like two lights cutting through fog, not startled, not afraid but recognizing. "You're awake," she said. Her voice was hoarse, as if she hadn't spoken in years. "So are you," I replied. We stared at each other for a long moment, and then something in the corridor shifted. A sudden drop in temperature, a shadow flickering where no light had been. "They don't like when we find each other," she said. I stepped closer. "Who?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she closed her eyes and placed her palm against the wall again. Beneath her touch, faint shapes bloomed, ripples of glowing lines, like a circuit board made of thought. The wall pulsed once, then opened into a round chamber lit by a dull violet light. Inside were symbols etched into the floor, hanging in the air, moving slowly. They rearranged themselves when we stepped in. I didn't understand them, but she seemed to. "This is a stabilizing zone," she murmured. "A neutral layer. The dream doesn't reach fully in here. It's made from what's left of memory." "Whose memory?" I asked. She looked at me carefully. "Yours and mine. And whoever built this." "Built?" She nodded. "This isn't just a dream we fell into. Someone designed it, or invited it. This reality is a vessel, like a ship, but not like any machine. It's organic, built from consciousness, from will, and something else is here with us." A tremor passed through the chamber then, a low hum that made my teeth ache. And from far away, but getting closer, came a sound like voices layered over each other, whispering backwards. "They've found us," she said quietly. We both turned to face the doorway. The light in the corridor beyond had gone dark. "Run?" "No," she said. "Remember." The Dreaming Ones. Chapter 5. The Architects. We didn't run. Instead, she led me to the far edge of the chamber, where the symbols drifted closer to the floor and pulsed with a rhythm, like breathing, slow, deliberate. As the shadow in the hallway grew darker, she placed her hand on one of the hovering symbols. It shimmered, folded inward, and became a door. No hinges, no sound, just light bending. We stepped through. The next space was vast, circular, like a planetarium turned inside out. The ceiling rolled like a night sky, full of constellations I didn't recognize. Some of the stars blinked in patterns. Some moved. One of them, I swear, they watched me back. Floating in the center of the space was a great structure. Not metal. Not stone. Something in between. bone-like yet shifting as if alive. Its surface was covered in etchings like those in the last chamber, except these weren't just symbols. They were names. Thousands, millions, all glowing faintly. She spoke without turning to me. These are the sleeping ones. Each name is a dreamer, a soul, a thread in the weave. I took a step closer, and one of the names began to glow brighter. It was mine. They built this place, she said, long before the collapse, before the earth burned, not to escape death, but to escape entropy. They thought if they could preserve the dreaming mind, they could preserve creation itself. Who are they? She paused, then looked up. They called themselves the architects. Not gods, not saviors, just minds advanced. Enough to understand that thought was the only thing that could survive the end. So they created the dream vessel, a shared field of conscious reality. But they didn't stay. They left the keys behind, for us. I felt the pulse again, that deep layered hum. The whispering was louder now. Behind us, the dark ripple in the corridor had entered the stabilizing zone. And something was stepping through. Not fast, not loud, but certain. I turned, heart pounding. From the shadows emerged a figure, no eyes, no mouth, but the shape of a human, tall, fluid, like it had been poured from ink and given form. It didn't walk. It floated, but barely, toes brushing the ground like it remembered walking once. "What is that?" I whispered. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped forward and spoke, a word in a language I didn't know, and the thing paused. Then it bowed its head. "It's not hunting us," she said. "It's guiding us. It's part of the dream, a sentry, a memory of the architects themselves, a guardian." Then why did it follow us? Because we passed the threshold. We remembered. The guardian turned, gesturing with a hand that didn't end in fingers but threads of flickering light. Behind it, a new door opened. Inside, blinding white. I turned to her. "Are you going in?" She nodded once. "This is the next layer." And then, looking at me with a strange gentleness, "If we keep going, there's no returning. Not to this dream. Not to this self. Only forward. Only deeper." I looked into the light. It pulsed like a heartbeat, like my own. And I stepped through. The Dreaming Ones. Chapter 6. What was left behind. The white light didn't lead to a room. It led to a memory, but not mine. I stood on a cliff beneath a sky of ash. The wind carried no scent, no sound. The sea below was black and still as if mourning. And behind me, the land was broken. Cities collapsed in on themselves like dying stars. Glass towers turned to salt. Forests turned to dust. The earth, of the real earth, and had not died in fire. It had died in forgetting. In this vision, the architects walked among the ruins. They were not divine. They were weary. Human. But their minds had gone further than ours, stretched past war, past famine, past the cycle of ruin, and when the end came, they did not try to rebuild. They tried to remember. They gathered the last of the living in great vessels, deep beneath the crust of the earth, and connected their minds in a lattice of dream. A final arc, not of flesh but of memory. They called it the loom, and within it they encoded not just the past, but possibility. I saw a child clinging to her mother as the sky dimmed to ember. I saw men planting trees that would never bloom. I saw someone burying books in sealed glass vaults, pressing their face to the page one last time. And I saw the dreamers led into the chambers, not sedated, not forced, willing, because the world had grown too loud to be heard, too fragmented to hold shape, too numb to feel. So they chose another path, to dream, and in dreaming to begin again. The memory faded like fog at sunrise, and I stood once more in the white chamber, trembling. The woman stood beside me. "They gave up everything," I whispered. She nodded. But they didn't run. They hoped that in the dream, We would remember not what we were, but what we could be. That somewhere within the collective, among the symbols, the echoes of echoes, someone would awaken. Someone would walk. I looked at her. Is that us? She smiled, just slightly. Maybe, or maybe we're just the first to ask. The Dreaming Ones. Chapter 7. The Disturbance. We entered the loom, not through a door, but through memory made solid, a stair that formed beneath our feet as we walked, as if the world was building itself just in time. The air was thick with humming, not mechanical, but alive like a field of bees, or the murmur of thought. The loom was not a place, not exactly. It was a nexus of all remembered things, overlapping dreams, lost languages, untold stories, songs never sung aloud. The air shimmered with symbols. Floating memories drifted past like lanterns. A man proposing to someone who never said yes. A girl running barefoot through a snowless winter. A child crying for a mother who was never real. Each thread glowed, each thread connected. At the center stood a great column of light, spiraling upward like a braid of silver wind. It pulsed in rhythm, not like a clock, but like a heart syncing with whoever stood near it. This was the core, the stabilizer, the memory of Earth before forgetting. I stepped closer. My hands tingled. The closer I came, the more I could feel. Everything, the grief of the final days, the hope they had planted here, the weight of what had been left behind. And then the tremor came. It didn't shake the ground. It shook the dream. Like a wrong note struck through a perfect chord, a ripple of panic tore through the threads. Symbols shattered midair. The spiral above us flickered, and somewhere deep in the loom a scream erupted. Not of voice, but of thought. She turned to me, face pale. Someone's waking. But that's good, isn't it? Not like this, she said. They're waking in fear. They don't remember. They're trapped, and they're tearing at the weave. The loom groaned, echoing with fractures in memory. Around us, the dreams twisted. The child's snowless winter became a forest of fire. The man's proposal became a scene of violence. A city collapsed in reverse, then forward again. Where are they? I asked. The one who's waking? She placed her palm against the air, and it opened like cloth being drawn back. A corridor of static and storm lay beyond. They're near the outer edge, she said. We're the dream phrase. If they wake like this, the whole network could collapse. I didn't hesitate. I stepped through. The Dreaming Ones. Chapter 8. The Frayed Edge. The corridor beyond the loom was unlike the others. It wasn't built of memory or light or even dream logic. It was made of raw static. Gray, flickering, shifting patterns that didn't hold shape for more than a second. Symbols appeared, dissolved. Faces blinked in and out. Sometimes I heard my own name whispered in a dozen voices. She stayed close behind me. Stay anchored, she said. Don't let it pull you in. The static wasn't just visual, it wanted. It tugged at thoughts, pulled at insecurities, tried to reshape us into fragments of things we'd forgotten to grieve. At the end of the corridor, silence. A clearing of space, blank, unfinished, unclaimed. And in the center, a figure crouched on the ground, hands over their ears. A man, I thought. Or maybe a boy. His age flickered. He shook violently, and the air around him ripped with every shudder, tearing through the threads of the dream. Memories bled from his skin like mist. Fast, sharp flashes of trauma. A burning building. A closed door. A voice saying, "It's your fault." I stepped closer. The woman held back. He's not fully formed, she warned. He's between states. If he sees you as a threat, this entire space could collapse. I knelt slowly. He looked up. His eyes were pitch black, not empty, but full of everything he couldn't process. Panic, pain, recognition. You remember, don't you? I said softly. He opened his mouth wide and screamed. Not aloud, not through sound, but through the dream itself. Reality fractured. A crack split across the ground beneath us, revealing nothing beneath, the true void beyond the dreaming layers. Shapes formed around him, not monsters, not creatures, but malformed memories given violent shape. Hands made of smoke, words with teeth, a mirror that reflected only pain. I didn't flinch. I reached out despite everything. "You're not alone," I said. "You're dreaming, just like me." He gasped, like hearing a human voice for the first time in years. The shapes froze. You remember?" he said. I nodded. "And I can help you." He looked at his hands. His skin began to settle, become solid again. The void pulled back. But then he whispered, "I didn't mean to. I was just so afraid." I woke up, and everything was wrong. I reached for him, and for the first time he let someone touch him. The world recalibrated. The static cleared. The corridor behind us reformed as gentle stone. The violent memories dissipated into starlight. She stepped forward now, slowly, carefully. "We can bring him back," she said. "He's part of the loom." The boy looked up at us both, still trembling. "Is this real?" he asked. And I answered truthfully, "It's as real as we make it." The Dreaming Ones. Chapter 9. The Stirring Below. We walked him back through the corridor of static, now quiet, though not entirely healed. The symbols still flickered. Whispers still echoed, but the chaotic pull had subsided. He walked between us like a child after a storm, fragile, lucid, eyes still glassy with too many truths. He looked at her once and asked, "Why does it hurt to remember?" She answered softly, "Because remembering is how the dream defends itself. Forgetting is easier, safe. But remembering makes the world real again." The loom welcomed him. As we crossed the threshold, the threads reached out, shimmering filaments of memory, gently reweaving his presence into the weave. His name returned to the spiral, glowing faintly, a quiet pulse among millions. But the moment his feet touched the loom's central floor, the hum changed. Lower, slower, something ancient stirred beneath. The woman turned sharply. "Do you feel that?" I nodded. The loom trembled slightly, just once, but enough. And then, from high above, in the impossible ceiling of the spiral chamber, a seam split open. Not like before, not gently, ripped. From it light poured downward, but not warm, not white, a light like memory too old to bear. I felt it before I saw it, and a pressure behind my ribs, like I'd been hollowed out by something that still lived inside me. And then it came, a figure descending slowly, not walking, not flying, falling upward and downward at once. It had no face. Its form was shifting, always on the verge of becoming something known, something remembered but never fully. It radiated presence like a planet radiates gravity, and the threads recoiled from it. The boy collapsed. The woman steadied him, but her eyes were wide, stunned. "That's not a dreamer," she whispered. "That's something else, something that's been waiting." The loom dimmed. I heard a voice in my head, not spoken but woven into the dream fabric. Old, familiar, my own, but not from this life. The source has noticed. The waking begins, and then out loud the boy whispered, "It's not part of the dream. It's what we forgot to forget." The Dreaming Ones. Chapter 10. The Source Beneath the Dream. It did not speak with words. It impressed itself into the loom, not as a being but as a truth. A forgotten one. A living paradox buried deep in the collective dream, so that the dreaming could be possible at all. The woman stepped forward. Her voice trembled. This wasn't part of the design, and yet it had always been there. Before the pods, before the loom, before the architects dared thread memory into fabric, there had been something older, a knowing, passed from dreamer to dreamer, life to life. The source was not made, it was left behind. Not a creature, not a god. A remnant of the first ones who tried to hold everything. Memory, Loss, hope, despair, and without forgetting, they had collapsed under the weight, and the architects, fearing the same fate, buried the source beneath the dreaming, sealing it with a paradox. No one could see it unless they remembered it, and no one could remember it unless they saw it. Until now. The boy's scream, his waking in terror, had cracked the seal, and far beyond the loom, across the dream fields, others were stirring. The ripples. In a city of glass, a woman opened her eyes mid-conversation and said, "This isn't my body," before vanishing into wind. On a mountain of stone, an old man who had dreamed himself a king dropped his sword and whispered, "I remember the flood." A child in a field of red leaves stopped playing and began to cry, not for fear, but for something she had lost before she was born. The dreams were fracturing. Waking wasn't supposed to happen like this, not all at once, but the truth had been touched, and it was spreading. Back in the loom, the presence drifted downward, slow and absolute. The dream around it collapsed quietly, not with fire or noise, but with a silent surrender like pages curling in heat. It moved past the threads of identity, past names, past memory itself, and then it turned not physically but intentionally toward me. I felt my own dream peel away. I remembered things I'd never lived. A mother holding my hand in a language I've never heard. A drowning that never happened. A promise made to a star. The feeling of standing before the architects. As one of them, I staggered. The woman caught me, eyes wide. "You were part of it," she said. "I was," I whispered, before I forgot. And the source pulsed once, like a bell struck in the dark. Not a warning, an invitation. The Dreaming Ones. Chapter 11. The Return and the Rising. The source reached out. Not with hands. With resonance, like a tuning fork pressed to the soul. It knew me, not my name, not my role, but my origin. I took a step forward. The woman beside me did not follow. She looked afraid, not for herself, but for what I might become. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I already did," I replied. "A long time ago. I just forgot." And then I entered it. There was no light, no sound, only weightless remembering. Inside the source. I did not walk. I unfolded, layer by layer, self peeled away like bark from a tree, until there was nothing left but the raw shape of knowing. I remembered building the first dream, not as a god, but as a weaver, a fragment of the ancient circle that had once looked into the void and said, "Let us make something that can remember beauty." I remembered the first dreamer, a girl who dreamed of a song that grew into a city. I remembered the day we sealed the source, because the memory of grief, pure and endless, had begun to tear minds apart. And I remembered my own surrender, stepping into the loom not to escape, but to sleep, until it was time to return. And now the dream was waking. Outside the source, elsewhere, in the northern reaches of the dream world, a boy blinked and saw cracks forming in the sky. In the underwater temples, long-forgotten statues turned their heads. In the desert cities built from music and sand, dreamers awoke screaming, not from terror but recognition. The dream could no longer contain itself. Some rejoiced, others panicked. Structures collapsed, then rebuilt themselves differently, based on new memories, collective choices. The world was becoming fluid again, unwritten, dangerous, alive. And above the loom, the great spiral of names began to rearrange. New names appeared, old ones returned. Some merged, some vanished. The architects had hoped for gentle awakening. What they had instead was a reckoning. Back inside the source, I felt the weight of countless minds, and each dreamer a candle, each memory a flame. And within that light I saw what came next. A decision, to wake the world and then dissolve the dream entirely, or to reshape it, carrying the memory of what had been, but choosing what comes next. And the choice was not mine alone. It would belong to all who remembered. The Dreaming Ones. Chapter 12, The End of Forgetting. When I stepped out of the source, I was not the same. I had no new powers. No glow, no certainty. Only clarity, like frost melting from glass after a long, cold night. The woman stared at me with wide, searching eyes, and then she bowed her head, not in submission but recognition. "You remember?" she whispered. "I do," I said. "And I'm not the only one." The Gathering. They came from all corners of the dream world, walking across landscapes that changed behind them. The rules of time bent to let them arrive together. Some rode smoke birds across oceans that had once been highways. Some climbed down staircases made of lullabies. Some simply appeared, guided by dreams within dreams. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. Each one had remembered in pieces or in full. Some still wore their dream bodies. Others shimmered already half beyond form. The woman stood beside me at the loom's heart. The boy, now steady, stood on my other side. We watched the crowd gather around the spiral of names. Above us the loom pulsed with unprecedented rhythm, awake now, aware of us, of itself. And then from within it a voice emerged. Not a singular voice, all of ours woven into one. The dream has served its purpose. The memory has returned. What shall we do now? The air was still. And then the split. The dreamers did not speak in words. They answered with intention. Some stepped forward and lifted their hands, shaping new dream cities from light and song, rewriting what had been lost. They wanted to stay, to build again, a world crafted from shared memory, without pain, without fear, shaped by awakened minds. Others stood silent and slowly began to fade. They were ready to leave the dream entirely, even if nothing waited beyond it. They would rather risk the unknown than remain inside an illusion. And a few, a small, silent few, stepped into the shadows beyond the loom, walking into the unshaped dark, to become weavers themselves. They would not choose. They would wait, and tend the dream should it ever be needed again. The final moment. The woman turned to me. "What will you do?" I looked out at the spiraling chamber, the gathered souls, the soft pulse of all that had been remembered. "I think," I said, "I will walk between. I will remember both." And she smiled. Because that was how it had always begun, not with a god, not with a machine, but with a dreamer who dared to remember. The dream did not end. It became a new world dreamed by those who remembered what was lost and what could be. And somewhere far beyond even the source, a single pod blinked open. A sleeper awoke beneath stars that no longer belonged to Earth. And for the first time in ages, they did not feel alone. The Dreaming Ones. Epilogue. The Dream Beyond the Dream. Long after the loom found stillness, the dreaming continued. Not as illusion but as invitation. The dreamers had not escaped. They had remembered. And with that remembering, new worlds were born. Some chose to build again, planting cities made from shared memory, where sorrow was not erased, but carried gently, like lanterns in the hands of those who walk together. Others awakened beyond the stars, where the earth once was, and found that home was not a place, but a pattern, a rhythm still echoing in the soul. Children dreamed of spirals, and drew them in frost. Artists painted doorways they'd never seen. Lovers met in places that never existed, until they dreamed them real. And somewhere, at the very edge of all things, the source hums softly, not as warning, but as promise. You are not alone. You never were. The dream lives on, and you are its keeper now.